It's time to learn about Webpack loaders and Babel. It is completely possible to use the latest tools and libraries without Node and Webpack. There is a problem with this. The first is that you'll end up writing more code than usual to accomplish a lot of the things you'd like to do. In truth, we're already writing a lot of code just to accomplish these tasks. However, this is just for setting things up. Once you have everything set up, you don't have to worry about viewing this code for quite a while. On the other hand, if you were to try to do these things without these tools, you'll find that you'll constantly have to update multiple files. This becomes very hard to manage. It's just not worth it in the end. I highly encourage you to keep pushing through on learning these tools as they will speed up development. We're almost close to finishing up the basics before we can learn how to integrate all of this with WordPress. The next tool we need to learn is Babel. Babel takes JavaScript to the next level. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the official Babel site. What Babel will do is allow you to write JavaScript that is not implemented in both browsers and Node. It will then convert that code into code that the browser or Node can understand. This may seem strange because Webpack seems to do something similar to this. That's true, but Webpack doesn't cover every single feature we'll need. Webpack just covers the basics. By using Babel, we are rest assured that we cover everything. It's important to note that Babel and Webpack are two completely different tools. You can use Babel without Webpack and vice versa. However, these two work very well together and using them both is very easy. In order to use Babel, we have to load 3 different modules. Babel is a very modular tool, meaning that the code is split up into different modules so you can pick what you want to use and leave the rest behind. Usually, you'll end up using a minimum of 3 Babel modules. The first module is the Babel-core. This is the heart of Babel. This module has the core functionality in order to make everything Babel-related work. This module will take care of reading your code and then transforming it into code that the browser can understand. The second module is the Babel-loader module. This module makes it easy to connect Webpack and Babel together. It handles a lot of the work for you. All you have to do is load and then configure it inside the config file and everything else will be connected. The last module will vary depending on what you want. Basically, the Babel-core module is just a way for you to read and parse JavaScript code. However, it doesn't handle what should and shouldn't be converted. ES6 isn't the latest version of JavaScript. There's also ES7 and ES8. The latest versions are barely supported in browsers or Node. ES6 is considered to be the next standard in web development. With that being said, if you wish, you can use ES7 or ES8. However, for this course, we will only be using ES6 code. There are various modules with their own set of rules for converting code. If you were to go to the Babel site, under Docs, you'll find a link to the official plugins you can use. There are 2 types of plugins, experimental and official. We won't bother with using experimental plugins as we don't need to go that far. Under the official set, you'll find a list of modules to use. So which one do we use? Well, it really depends on what you want to use. However, for most cases, the Babel-preset-env module is the recommended one. It's usually reviewed by the team of Babel and is considered the most stable and usable module out of them all. Let's get started with all these modules. I'm going to enter the following command. npm install --save-dev Babel-core Babel-loader Babel-preset-env. This may take a while. Pause the video if you need to wait. You may get a couple of warnings, and that's perfectly fine. A good way to confirm if a module was installed is by looking at the package.json file. Node will usually add your modules to the dependencies list if the module was installed successfully. It's a good indicator of determining if your modules are good to go. Alright, we can now use Babel as a loader. What exactly are loaders? Webpack has a feature called loaders. Loaders are a way to extend the way Webpack functions. It's the same idea for using WordPress hooks. You are allowed to load in certain code that will modify the final result in some fashion. The Babel-Loader module we installed earlier makes it easy to integrate Babel with Webpack. All we have to do is update our config file to use this module. Inside the config file, create a new property called module. Since we're using a third-party module, we need to set this property. This property allows you to modify how third-party modules are used with Webpack. Keep in mind that Babel is technically a module, so if we want to load the Babel module, we have to set up this property. Webpack will take care of loading it for you. All we have to specify is what modules should be loaded with Webpack. The value of this property will be an object which will contain even more properties about how modules work with Webpack. The only property I want to set is the rules property. This will be an array of modules we want to use with Webpack. To load a module, you have to create an object like so. Each object in this array will represent a module. We only have one module, which is the Babel-Loader. We installed 3 modules, but the Babel-Loader module is the module that allows us to connect Babel with Webpack. To specify a module, you need to set the use property to Babel-Loader. This will tell Webpack to look for a module called Babel-Loader. The Babel-Loader will take care of the rest with connecting the other 2 modules together. There is one last thing I want to do before we're finished with configuring Webpack. I want to set a property called test. Webpack is not just for JavaScript. Webpack will also apply to images and style sheets. Since we're using Babel, Babel will be applied to images and style sheets. However, Babel does not process or work with images and style sheets. We'll get errors. On top of that, Webpack can also be applied to other extensions and file types if it's configured to do so. We only want Babel to work on JavaScript files. To make sure Babel will only work with JavaScript files, then we'll have to set this property. The value of this property will be a regular expression. The regular expression will be //.js%/. If you're unfamiliar with regular expressions, then I highly recommend you take the time to study them. Regular expressions are kind of beyond the scope of this course as they're complicated to explain. All this will do is make Webpack use Babel for JavaScript files only. Alright, that's it. There is one last thing we need to do before everything will work. We need to create a file named .babelrc. It's very important that you name it this. There is no file extension. It's just .babelrc. Inside this file, you can configure how Babel works. You have to create an object, and the property we want to set is the presets property. You simply pass in an array of modules that contain rules on how to modify the output of JavaScript. To put it simply, you pass in the Babel-preset-env module. Babel will look at this array and will load the modules inside this array. The Babel-preset-env is a module that will look at your code and tell Babel how it should convert that code into something that browsers can understand. It's important that you make one distinction between these 2 files. The Webpack config files allows you to control how Webpack works. The module property allows you to make the bridge between Webpack and a third-party module. However, it does not completely control that module. Babel needs its own configuration file so you can specify exactly how it'll work. Alright, that's it. Let's test things out. I'm going to run the npm run start command. You should receive no errors. Let's view the HTML file again and see if we still see the message being outputted. We can also view the bundle.js file and you'll find it's exactly the same as before. The reason for this is because we aren't using any advanced features of JavaScript yet. This will lead us into the next lecture. We're going to begin using some of the new features that JavaScript has to offer. I'll see you in the next lecture.